So when we do integer subtraction, of course we first do what they already know, right? So that's 5, and this is a minus because you are removing. It means I am removing 5 minus 3. I have 5, I want to remove 3, and the result will be 2. Okay. You can treat it as adding a negative integer, but this is not necessary. Both numbers are positive, it's fairly straightforward. You remove 3 from 5. These children already understood. So now when I want to do something like 3 minus 5, which means I have 3, but I want to remove 5 tokens, I can't do that. So in this case, it becomes important to invoke Brahmagupta's fourth law and introduce 0 so that you want there to be more positives. But you can't add a positive, that will change the number. But you can add a 0. So Brahmagupta said that these two are a 0. And so the number of zeros you need is a difference, which is 2. So you add 2 zeros. And then you can remove the 5. And what you are left with is negative 2. Right? So in this question, it is possible also to represent it differently and say this is as good as, 3 is positive number. Because we already looked at the laws for addition, you can look at it as this is 3, but you are adding negative 5, because then you can invoke Brahmagupta's laws that said if one is positive and one is negative and you are adding, then it is the difference, and the difference here is 2 and it's negative, so that is clear. So what we are saying is we started with the same 3 and we can say we are adding negative 5. Okay, so then you remove the positives and what is left is negative 2. So this might be easier to do when you have a larger negative number. It's like adding a large negative number. Instead of removing, you are adding a large negative number, you get the same result. If you do it a few times, you will be convinced that this works, that this is always what happens. So now if you had a positive number and you wanted to remove, remember this is a minus. And that's why you put brackets. You put brackets, there's another sign. If there's no other sign, and this is the first number, you don't need to put these brackets. These brackets are to separate out the fact that you have one sign here which is negative, which is minus, and this is a number that is negative 3. So that is I had 3. But I wanted to remove 3 of these. But I can't remove 3 of these from here because they are not there. So again you use Brahmagupta's fourth law and you add zeros. Zeros you can add. So when you add zeros, then you can remove the negative 3 and you are left with 6. Right? So if you do enough of them, you can say, okay, this can be written as this negative is positive business basically is here. This becomes when you open the bracket, it becomes a positive and it becomes as good as adding 3. So removing a negative 3 is as good as adding a positive 3, which gives you 6. Yeah. So now of course in this case, because removing a negative number is as good as adding a positive number, it doesn't matter which one is bigger because you're always adding. So this is an easy one. Okay? It doesn't matter whether this number is smaller than 3, larger than 3 in this case. So when you have a negative number and you're removing a positive number, the children may be able to recognize this as a rendu rina rina. It's okay. You can accept it. That you say, okay, yeah, rendu rina rina, which means it's going to be a more negative number, negative 8. So it is good to ask them which law are we using. Even though the laws are only for positive numbers, if they are able to recognize something from negative numbers, we can ask them which law are we using. So, and then these things become panam, 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 rendu panam, panam, rendu rinam, rendu kadan, kadan. So again, in this case, you can start with 3 and you can say, alright, this is negative 3, I want to remove negative 5, it's not there, so I need to add 2 zeros. And the result becomes positive. But you have to derive a rule out of it. And so the rule you can derive out of it is basically that it becomes a positive number. The negative 5 becomes it's as good as adding a positive 5. Removing a negative is as good as adding a positive. Removing a positive is as good as adding a negative. That's it. So as long as we stay with that, then you can say panam, rinam, which is kadan, panam is vidyasam. Vidyasam in this case is 2 and this is the larger number, so it is positive.